Good day and welcome to this presentation on the PRIME program. My name is Sherry Philpott and I'm a Senior Health and Safety Advisor with Workplace NL. Today, we're going to look at the new PRIME program and what updates and changes are happening. We're going to look at Path 1 practice incentives as well as Path 2 practice incentive requirements. And we're going to look at how to qualify for the PRIME refund, and we're going to look at what the audit cycle will look like for Path 2 employers. Just as a reminder, effective March 1st, 2024, new requirements were implemented to raise the worker threshold for occupational health and safety programs and committees from 10 or more workers to 20 or more workers at a worksite. Many other jurisdictions, including federally regulated workplaces covered under the Canada Labor Code Part 2, have had this requirement in place for 20 or more workers, so this was being done to be more consistent with other jurisdictions within Canada. So firstly, let's talk a little bit about what PRIME is. So PRIME is Workplace NL's financial incentive program. Through PRIME, employers can get rebates for establishing and maintaining health and safety within their workplace, as well as early return to work programs. The PRIME program helps employers and workers in their prevention efforts, and if an injury does occur, it helps them get their injured worker back to work. So PRIME has two different incentive portions. The first one is the practice incentive, and this is a behavior-based component that rewards an employer's efforts. It provides a 5% refund on the average annual assessments based on compliance with criteria in the areas of occupational health and safety and early return to work. To receive the 5% practice refund, employers must meet their practice incentive requirements, which we will go over a little later in this presentation. The specific practice requirements that an employer has to meet will depend on their employer category, which we will review on the next slide. Part 2 of PRIME is the experience incentive, and this is a incentive that's based on actual results from claim costs. So this is an additional refund, charge, or neither based on claims experience. An employer must meet the Part 1 criteria to get their experience refund under Part 2. However, an employer will always be subject to an experience charge if applicable. So looking at employer categories for the new updated PRIME, we will have Path 1 and Path 2 going forward. So currently PRIME is small, medium, and large, or I guess I should say the original PRIME was small, medium, large. Currently we have Path 1, medium, and large. And in the next year or so, we're going to be transitioning into Path 1 and Path 2 employers. So Path 1 employers will be looking at OHS education, and these employers include any employer that has less than $10,000 in average base assessments, or they have $10,000 or more in average base assessments and have less than 20 workers at each worksite. A Path 2 employer will be looking at OHS certification, and those employers have $10,000 or more in average base assessments and have at least one worksite that has 20 or more workers. Path 1 has already rolled out through 2023 and 2024. In 2025, workplaces will continue to develop their 15-element program in preparation for audits in 2026 if they fall within Path 2. During the transition, we will still have medium and large employers due to the change in the average assessment value, which reduced from 48,000 to 10,000. And those medium and large employers will be phased out when Path 2 is rolled in. So let's look at Path 1 practice incentive requirements. So Path 1 employers, OHS education, within this program, we're looking to help smaller employers improve their safety performance by providing foundational education on occupational health and safety responsibilities and the importance of effective return to work programming. All employers that fall within Path 1 category will be required to have a trained OHS committee, worker health and safety representative or designate at each applicable worksite in accordance with the legislation. So what that means is if you have work sites that have less than 20 workers, then you're required to have a worker rep or designate. And if you have work sites that have 20 or more workers, you're required to have an OHS committee. The training for those individuals will be based on their type of role. So if they're a worker rep or designate, they're required to complete the level 1 training. If they are an OHS committee, the co-chairs will be required to complete level 1 and level 2 training. And if you have a work site that has 50 or more workers, then everyone on the committee will have to complete that training. In year 1, participating employers will be required to have their trained worker representative, designate, or committee based on their requirements and complete 2 other required Prime online courses as outlined in the CTR. In years 2 and 3, participating employers will be required to complete 2 required Prime courses per year until a total of 5 courses have been completed. Compliance with these requirements in this category will be determined electronically through Workplace Nell's Certification Registry, or the CTR, and employers must claim their network and link their trained workers in the CTR. As well, OHS committee minutes will be checked via Connect when applicable. Construction employers must be course certified by the NLCSA to qualify for Prime practice refunds and are not required to do the Prime online courses under Path 1. In addition to that, non-construction employers who have an acceptable safety certification, such as CORE from the NLCSA, will qualify for the Prime practice refund and are not required to do the Prime online courses under Path 1. So looking at the required training for Path 1 employers, the first one is the OHS Committee Worker Health and Safety Representative and Designate Certification Training. So this is designed to provide participants with the knowledge and skills required to fulfill their legislative duties as a worker rep, designate, or OHS committee. The OHS Committee Worker Health and Safety Representative and Designate Certification Training Level 1 is required for OHS committees, worker reps, and designates. The OHS Committee Member Certification Training Level 2 is required for OHS committees only, and Level 1 training is a prerequisite for the Level 2 training. Both Level 1 and Level 2 training are valid for 3 years and will have to be recertified before expiry. These are certification training courses that are offered by training providers, and offerings can be found in the CTR. The next few courses are what we're calling our required online Prime courses. So these are courses that we have developed internally and are offering them through our CTR. They are free to use. They are module-based and self-paced, which means that learners can log in, do a couple modules, log back out, log back in, and pick up where they left off. They can do it on their own time, and they don't have to do the whole course in one sitting. So the first one is the Introduction to Early and Safe Return to Work. So this course will provide employers an overview of the Early and Safe Return to Work process and Workplace Nell's Prime program. This course should take approximately an hour and a half to do, depending on the user speed. The next is Introduction to Musculoskeletal Injuries. So musculoskeletal injuries, or MSIs, are the most common workplace injury in the province and can be debilitating for those who are injured. The Newfoundland and Labrador Occupational Health and Safety Regulations require employers to find MSI risk factors in the workplace and reduce the risk of injury to workers. The risk factors include, but are not limited to, working in awkward postures, prolonged postures, repetitive work, and using too much force. This course will assist workplaces in identifying and correcting MSI risk factors with practical guidance in designing, planning, and organizing work to reduce the risk of MSIs to keep workers healthy and safe. Depending on user speed, this course should take approximately 2 hours to complete. The next one is Introduction to Finding and Managing Hazards in the Workplace. So every workplace has hazards, and everyone in the workplace has a role to play in preventing them. The first step in protecting workers and creating a healthy and safe workplace is to find and manage potential hazards in the workplace. So this course will provide employers with the knowledge, tools to find and manage potential hazards within the workplace. And depending on the user speed, it should take approximately 2 hours to complete. Then we have Introduction to Workplace Inspections. This course will provide employers the knowledge and tools to effectively plan, conduct, and document workplace inspections. This course is currently in development and will be available in January of 2025. And lastly, we have the Introduction to Investigating Incidents. This course is a practical approach to investigating workplace incidents with an emphasis on how to find the root cause, how to conduct the investigation, and how to make an effective recommendations to prevent similar occurrences from happening again. This course is currently also in development and will be available in January of 2025. It's important to note that when you are training people in these courses, that you are required to have one person complete each course. So what that means is you could have either one person complete all 5 courses, or you can have 5 different people complete one course each, as long as all 5 courses have been completed. And you have to maintain that training as well. So if you have someone who has been trained in these courses and they leave your organization, you must replace that training with someone else. We have been suggesting that you train multiple people in these courses because it's very useful information. It's free to take and easy to do, and it would be a great backup to have in case something happens, someone leaves the company and stuff like that. So now let's look at how to access the education courses. So you go to our website, workplacenl.ca, and up in the right-hand corner, there's a little button that says My Workplace NL Online Services. When you click that, it will bring you to this page here, where there's 5 options: workers, employers, healthcare providers, training, and vendors. So when you click on training, a little drop-down will pop up that says Certification Training Registry. So when you click on that, that will bring you to our Certification Training Registry. Another way to get here would be to, I tend to go through Google. I'll type in Workplace NL CTR or Blue Drop CTR or something like that, and it should bring you to this page as well. So this is the landing page for our CTR, and right at the very top there, right on the right-hand side, there's OHS Education. In that little box, there's a click here to view Prime Path 1 courses, and that will take you to the courses that are required for Path 1 employers. So on this page, it outlines your required courses. So there's a link that will bring you to the OHS committee training, as well as there's links for the Introduction to Early and Safe Return to Work, the Introduction to Finding and Managing Hazards, as well as the Introduction to Musculoskeletal Injuries. Once the other 2 courses go live, they will also be on this page as well. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how a Path 1 employer will receive their Prime refund. So after an employer submits their annual employer statements via Connect by the end of February each year, there will be a system check to validate an employer for the Prime refund. To ensure that you get credit for the courses completed, employers must claim their employer network, as Workplace NL will verify courses are completed through the Certification Training Registry. Like I mentioned, at least one person has to complete the mandatory courses, but they may be done by multiple people within the workplace, and this provides an opportunity for further health and safety education at your workplace. The same person does not have to complete every course. For example, one person can complete the return to work course and a different person can complete the hazard rec course, as long as those 2 people are connected to the employer through the CTR. So you'll need to claim your employer network, make sure that the required training is completed, and submit your annual employer statements by the end of February of each year. To claim your network, you will need to go onto the CTR and follow through the steps. There is a button that says Claim Your Network right on the front page. So claiming your network will not only allow you to qualify for the Prime refund, it will also help employers manage their workplace training requirements and view worker completion records. There are how-to guides on how to claim your network right on our website at workplacenl.ca. If you go to the website that's currently on the page there, you can click on the how-to guides as well. So these are also linked on our website. So there's a complete how-to guide, which is a PDF document that shows you how to use the CTR as an employer. And within that, there's claiming your network guidelines, as well as there's a video that walks you through the steps on how to complete or how to claim your employer network as well. To To claim your network, you'll need your employer training ID and you'll need the invoice number from your most recent assessments invoice issued by Workplace NL. If you need assistance, you can contact Workplace NL Service Associate at 709-778-1000. In addition to claiming your network, you also need to invite your employees to join your network. So in order to get credit for an employee's training, they must be attached to your network and you have to invite them to attach them. When an employee has entered your employee training ID into the employment section of their user profile, they will automatically be attached to your network as well. So instructions on how to invite your employee to your network can be found in that how-to guide for employers as well. And there is also a video on how to invite your employees. Annual employer statements must be completed by the end of February every year. And this will include your employer payroll statement, your OHS statement, and your contractor statement if applicable. If you don't submit your AES by the end of February of each year, your prime refund will automatically be forfeited, and a late charge will also be applied to your account. It's important to note that the information reported in your annual employer statements is used to verify what prime category you are in, either Path 1 or Path 2, so it's important that information is reported correctly. So now let's talk about the practice incentive requirements for Path 2, OHS certification. So all employers that fall within Path 2 category will be required to have a 15-element OHS program. Throughout 2024 and 2025, Workplace NL is providing education based on these elements. We have developed a procedure 507, Prime Path 2 Employers OHS certification criteria. This procedure outlines specifically what we will be looking for within those programs, and it can be found on our website. If you go to workplacenl.ca and in the search bar type in procedure 507, it should come up there for you. Our health and safety advisors are also available to advise employers while they're developing their programs, and first audits will occur in 2026. So let's walk through each element as a brief overview. Full details of what is required is in procedure 507. So the first element is leadership commitment. Within this element, we're looking for an OHS policy. We're going to look to see that you have all 15 elements of the OHS program, as well as that you communicate the OHS policy and program to workers, and that you provide health and safety training for supervisors. So we're going to be looking for Workplace NL's supervisor health and safety certification or equivalent training to persons who are considered to be supervisors as determined by the Newfoundland and Labrador Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 2. Element 2 is hazard recognition, evaluation, and control. So in this element, we're going to look for a process and procedure that outlines hazard recognition, evaluation, and control for your organization. We're going to look to see that you have completed hazard assessments using a standardized form and that you communicate present and potential hazards to workplace parties. We're also going to look to see that you educate and train workers in the hazard process and reporting procedures at your workplace. Element 3 is incident reporting and investigation. So in this element, we're looking to see that you have an incident reporting and investigation procedure. We're going to look to see that you could have completed incident investigations that, using a standardized form, that you have a process to provide notification to authorities that meets the legislative requirement. So what that's referring to is there's a requirement for injuries to be reported to Workplace NL and for serious injuries to be reported to the OHS Division of Digital Government and Service NL. And so we're looking for a documented process on how you're going to do those notifications, where, when, who, stuff like that. We're going to look to see that you communicate the requirements for the incident reporting and investigation to your workers, and that you provide incident investigation training to your investigators on your own internal process. Element 4 is PPE. So in this element, we're looking for a procedure that outlines the selection, inspection, cleaning, maintenance, storage, and use of PPE. We're going to look to see that facilities and supplies that are required for cleaning and storing the PPE that you use at your workplace are available, that you provide PPE users and their supervisors training on where, when, and what PPE is required, the inspection, cleaning, maintenance, storage, use, and limitations of PPE, as well as to whom they should report concerns or incidents involving PPE. Element 5 is workplace inspections. So in this element, we're looking for a workplace inspection procedure. We're going to look for completed workplace inspections using a standardized form, for example, a checklist. If you have equipment that requires a preventative maintenance procedure or program, we're going to look to see that they are in place and that you train persons involved with performing the workplace inspections on your internal process on how to do so. Element 6 is safe work practices and procedures. So we're going to look to see that you have a procedure that outlines the requirements for safe work practices and procedures. So this should include things like when you're going to develop them, how often are they reviewed and updated, what are the requirements that will go into your safe work practices and procedures. We're going to look to see that you develop, review, and update your safe work practices and procedures in accordance with the above document. We're going to look to see that you make your safe work practices and procedures available to workers at each work site, and that if you have any workers that work alone, that you have working alone procedures. We're going to make sure that you have education or training provided to workers who use your safe work practices and procedures, including the potential risks and consequences for not following them. Element 7 is training and communication. So a training and communication plan, we're going to look for that you provide workers with job-specific training based on the worker's responsibilities. We're going to look to see that you provide worksite orientations for workers and other persons at the worksite, including contractors and visitors, and that you communicate OHS information throughout the workplace. Element 8 is emergency preparedness and response. So in this element, we're going to look for specific emergency response, rescue, and evacuation plans based on a hazard assessment. We're going to look to see that you provide facilities, equipment, and supplies to support these emergency preparedness, rescue, and response plans. For example, if there's something that you state in your plans that you're going to use during an emergency, then you must have that available at the worksite. We're going to look to see that you communicate emergency information to all workplace parties, including evacuation routes, muster locations, evacuation procedures, the locations of emergency supplies and equipment, emergency contact information, as well as the names of first aiders. We're also going to look to see that you train all parties in their respective roles in the emergency response or rescue plan. As well, that you supplement training with emergency evacuation drills for each occupied work site at least once a year at a minimum. We're also going to look to see that you provide first aid training and maintain the required number of trained first aiders on each shift according to legislation. And the names of the first aiders must be posted in a prominent worksite location. Element 9 is OHS committees, worker health and safety representatives, and designates. So in this element, we're going to look to see that you have an active OHS committee worker rep or designate. We're going to look to see that you have terms of references for the OHS committee or policy health and safety committee where applicable. That you have documented responsibilities for the worker health and safety representative or designate according to legislation. And that training has been provided to the OHS committee, worker health and safety representative or designate, and the policy health and safety committee where applicable. Element 10 is return to work. So in element 10, we're going to look for a return to work policy. We're going to look for procedures to be followed from the time of the injury or illness to the completion of the return to work. We're going to look to see that a standardized form is used or that WorkPlaceNL's early and safe return to work plan form is used to record return to work plans. We're going to look to see that WorkPlaceNL prescribed claim forms are available at each worksite in person or electronically. So this will include the Form 6, which is the worker report of injury, and the Form 7, which is the employer report of injury. We're going to look to see that they communicate return to work processes to workers. For example, this can include the injury reporting system, the availability of return to work, the procedures to be followed, and so on. We're also going to look to see that the return to work policy has been posted in a prominent location at each work site. We're going to look to see that the employer trains parties that are involved with developing and managing return to work plans in the process on how to do so, and that they evaluate the effectiveness of the return to work element of the OHS program at a minimum annually, and if there are any changes to applicable legislation or standards. Element 11 is fall prevention. So you're going to note that we actually called this element prevention and not protection because we wanted to encompass slips, trips, and falls. So we're going to look for a fall prevention procedure, as well as hazard assessments that identify where workers are at risk of slips, trips, and falls, and that appropriate controls have been put into place. We're going to look for job-specific fall protection plans where workers work at height, and we're going to look to see that you train and educate workers in fall prevention. Under occupational health, which is element 12, we're going to look for any occupational health plans or programs that are required by legislation. For example, a hearing protection program, a respiratory protection program, WHMIS, asbestos, so on and so forth. We're going to look to see that they have occupational health hazard assessments that are required by legislation, and that a health surveillance program is put into place as required by the occupational health plans or occupational health and safety legislation. So there's a great example that I like to use for this one is hearing protection. So if you have workers that are required to wear hearing protection, you're required to have a hearing protection program. And within that program, you have to provide an annual hearing test for those workers. So that annual hearing test is a great example of a health surveillance program. We're also going to look to see that you train workers on occupational health hazards and controls that are required for their protection. Element 13 is musculoskeletal injury prevention. So in this one, we're going to look for an MSI prevention procedure. We're going to look to see that you identify and address MSI risk factors in the workplace, and that you communicate existing and potential MSI risk factors to workers before work or tasks begin. We're also going to look to see that you train workers in MSI prevention. Element 14 is workplace violence, harassment, and psychological health and safety. So we're going to look to see that you assess the risk of workplace violence at your workplace, that workplace violence procedures and work environment arrangements are put into place to eliminate or minimize workplace violence, and that you communicate the risk of workplace violence to your workers. We're going to look to see that you have the harassment prevention plan as outlined by legislation. We're going to look to see that you train workers in harassment prevention in general, as well as your specific employer's harassment prevention plan. And we're going to look to see that you assess the workplace for psychological health and safety hazards in consultation with workers, that you support workers' psychological health and safety by implementing control measures for the identified hazards, and that you educate workers on psychological health and safety, the hazards that have been identified, and the control measures that are being implemented. And lastly, element 15 is management review, records, and statistics. So in this element, we're going to look for a management review, records, and statistics procedure. We're going to look for a standardized form that you use to record your OHS statistical summaries. And we're going to look for evidence that you review the OHS statistical trends to determine if there are any opportunities for continuous improvement or if there are any corrective actions needed. So now that we've just briefly did an overview of what will be required in the OHS program, let's talk a little bit about how a Path to employer can receive their prime refund. So to qualify for the prime refund, the Path to employers will need to implement their 15-element program, and they will also need to indicate that they wish to participate in the prime audit when they submit their annual employer statements by the last day of February each year. So employers are required to submit their annual employer statements, or AES, each year by the end of February. This will include the employer payroll statement, the OHS statement, and the contractor statement if applicable. The payroll statement will include a question where the employer will indicate if they wish to participate in Workplace Nell's OHS certification program. This will let us know if the employer wishes to participate in the prime audit. If you don't submit your AES by the last day of February, your prime refund will automatically be forfeited and you will not be audited. A late report charge will also be applied to your account. After AES is complete and you have indicated that you wish to participate in the prime audit, then your firm will be placed into a queue and be scheduled for an audit. To receive the prime refund, you must participate in the prime audit, as well as receive a 65% on each individual program element or an 80% on the overall score. OHS certification audits, or the prime audit, will be conducted on a 3-year cycle. This will include workplace NL audits as well as employer self audits. Generally, Workplace NL will conduct the initial OHS certification audit to verify the prime practice and criteria in the workplace. Following the initial audit, the employer will conduct self-audits in years 2 and 3. Self-audits must be submitted to Workplace NL for review and verification. This audit procedure or audit cycle is outlined in the policy PR15 Prime Practice Incentive for Path to Employers OHS certification, which can be found on our website. Audits will include documentation reviews, observational tours, and interviews to confirm that all prime practice criteria has been met. A minimum audit score per element and a minimum overall audit score is required for an employer to be eligible for the prime refunds. Prime audits will no longer be all or nothing. So in order to achieve a pass on the prime audit, employers must achieve a minimum of 80% in the overall total score and a minimum of 65% for each individual element. Workplace NL and employer self-audits will be conducted using a web-based software. We are developing a step-by-step guide for using the software and completing the audit questions. For example, and each question will have a guideline that details what we're looking for. So for example, there will be a question that's laid out, a specific question, and then right underneath it will be specific criteria of what we're looking for to satisfy that question. We're also developing auditor training, which will be go hand in hand with the guidelines, and it will detail how to complete the audit and how to use the software. If you have any questions about Prime or health and safety in general, please reach out to us at safety@workplacenl.ca, or you can call 709-778-1000. We have a podcast where we share health and safety information. So The Signal, which is Workplace NL's health and safety podcast, showcases occupational health and safety practices and principles to help you protect workers from injuries and illnesses while working. Each episode spotlights a relevant OHS topic and encourages listeners to remain dedicated to workplace safe practices and injury prevention. Join us for each episode as we explore current OHS topics that improve the health and safety of you and your coworkers. There is a recent episode about the updates to the Prime program if you would like to have a listen to that one. You can find The Signal through your favorite podcast platform, or you can go to our website, workplacenl.ca, and type in podcast, and it should come up there for you. As well as episodes are also on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in taking an upcoming webinar, you can scan the QR code on the screen now, or you can go to workplacenl.ca/about/events. Thank you for joining this presentation today. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.